So I'm glad we could put this together. So as Jeff said, my name is Jason San. I'm Director of Sales and Business Development for LK and Associates. So we're a local manufacturers rep firm here in the state of Florida, and we work closely with manufacturers in the electronics and technology space, along with systems integrators such as Boca Tech and Automation. And we also work closely with CEDIA as CEDIA members and outreach instructors so that we can educate all the different trades in the community on what it is we have to offer. And I really like this course today because technology is changing so fast. There's so much about infrastructure that has to be put into the projects that people really are not aware of. And so this is our opportunity to educate everyone, because ultimately our goal is to help architects and designers, meet and exceed the expectations of their clients. So today's course, Understanding Today's Home Technology and Infrastructure Options. This course is approved by AIA and ASID. It's presented by CEDIA. CEDIA is our trade organization that is a worldwide organization for systems integrators that provides training and education and annual trade shows to showcase the latest in technology. And as part of that, we are outreach instructors and outreach providers. So we provide education to the design build community to help educate you on the different trends. So as I said, this is an approved AIA and ASID course. So following today's course, after the presentation, we'll have a little bit of a Q&A so we can dig deeper on the topics we discussed. But also at that point, if you want to understand more about the team at Boca Tech and Automation or dive deeper into other technology topics, you can do so. Later on today or tomorrow, you're going to receive an email with some links to complete. And once you complete the evaluation, the sign up, you'll get your certificates for your credits for today's course. And while we're going through the course, please feel free to jump in, put something in the chat window. We'll have open mics at the end. Again, we want this to be an engaging discussion and give you the opportunity to ask any questions you have about technology. So today's course is related to, what technology is available today, kind of where the future of technology is going, and talk about all the different choices that are out there, because there are so many different choices when it comes to technology for the home. Your clients are coming to build projects and they have iPads and iPhones and Android devices. So they're obviously already ingrained in technology, but they're going to want to do things with these devices. And so we're going to talk about what those options are. We're going to give you that overview of some of the current home technologies available. We're going to talk about wired versus wireless, which is really, really important. We're also going to talk about integrated systems and what an integrated system is and how it works, and how to engage with a electronic systems professional. We're another trade, just like a plumber and electrician. Unfortunately, we usually get brought into the projects very late, and it makes it very challenging for us to do our work. So hopefully during today's course, you get a better understanding of what's involved behind the scenes so that you can be engaged with a systems integrator early on. We really urge architects and designers to form a relationship with an integration professional. Even if you don't have a project to work on together, use us as a resource so we can help educate you. We believe in making sure clients get their expectations met, even if we're not part of the job. So we don't want that bad experience to happen when it comes to technology. And I'm sure everybody on this call has been on a project where technology has kind of gone bad. So the learning objectives, we're going to focus on the various systems that are out there and their unique qualities. We're going to talk about the benefits of technology related to energy efficiency, comfort, convenience, safety. We're going to also analyze some of the considerations related to wired and wireless. And this is really a hotly debated topic because the advancement in wireless technology is going so fast. People tend to forget why wired is important. And also talk about the timeline for engaging systems integration professional for the design build process. I'll cut to the chase on that as early as possible. There's so many things that, depending on what the client's looking for, we need to be involved very early. But we'll talk more about that later in the presentation. So as we start with some of the technologies, I think it's interesting. I joked about a year ago today we were starting this journey, but really a year ago today we were all hunkered down in our homes. We were really using technology. We were taxing our networks because our kids had to use Zoom. We had to work from home with VoIP phones. We were figuring a lot of things out, and people, I think, realized how important technology was. So we can talk all day about the really cool benefit features that we enjoy, right, to entertain our friends. But Jeff, what are what are some of the technologies you relied on, a year ago without getting too in depth that helped your business function? I think you might be muted.
Oh yeah, sorry, I was muted there. Um, the networking infrastructure is what's key because everything that we have rides on top of that, and that's a combination of wireless and hardwired system. And if things are not working well there, then anything from a video call to email is compromised.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you and I had a few discussions on that over some of these different calls. I actually had some issues last year, but yeah, for us it was the same thing. Something else that's interesting is lighting. I actually have some special lights installed here at my office now, so I can do these types of calls better, which a year ago I did not. Didn't think it was too important. So I think that's interesting to talk about. We all had a different experience with technology last year. But going back to kind of the presentation, we have audio distribution, and audio distribution is a broad topic, but music throughout the house is probably one of the things that drives a lot of clients to put technology in their homes. But within that, there are so many choices, wireless audio, wired audio, what types of speakers, what types of, what's my source for music. Sonos has done a great job dominating that market, but a lot of people don't quite understand what it's for. People almost think Sonos is music, right? But there's more to it than that. So we'll dive a little bit further into what audio distribution means. Same for video distribution. The changes in smart TV technology has really changed the landscape on why video distribution is important, but there still is a big need there. So we'll talk more about that. Lighting control is another one. So I just mentioned an element of having lights in my office to light up for my conference calls, and I just don't have any lights. I have lights that can be adjusted for color and match the natural lighting outside my home. When we talk about lighting control, we're talking about automating all the different loads in our house. And typically in the past, this was used on 30,000 square foot properties where the clients didn't want to have to walk around and shut all the lights off. But today it's a modern day convenience, but it also has an aesthetic appeal where we can reduce wall clutter. So we'll talk more about that later. Home theater and media centers are other technologies that exist. Home theater is something that really catapulted our industry, and we saw a huge growth and surge in that area. Then we saw a change into these more media centers or media spaces or multi-use spaces where it could be a theater, but also a gaming room. And now we're seeing a resurgence in theaters. With the pandemic, theaters were shut down. You could not go to the movie theater. And now, as a result, even with them opening up, studios are doing direct releases. I think HBO Max was one of the first ones to have some movies direct release through Apple TV the day it would have been in the theater. So now we see a big uptick in clients looking to invest in home theaters. Automated window treatments, another great category. Again, you have the convenience of lowering shades at different times, so you don't have to get up and do it yourself. But there's other benefits of lowering your energy usage because you can take advantage of the natural light outside. Security has come a long way from just having your alarm system protecting your house. The advancement in technology with cameras, we can do so many great things. Facial recognition at your door to unlock it, um, putting perimeters around the space. Jeff, when it comes to cameras and some of the perimeter technology, have you guys done some projects where you're using the camera to kind of outline the landscape perimeter that can alert the client if somebody's coming onto the property?
Yes, funny story here, true story. About a month ago, I tested out a new camera system um, from Cisco, and it has heat mapping and detection and so forth built into it. So I set up one outside of our building, replacing an existing camera that didn't have that technology, and set up a tracking area. For the first week or so, it was fine. Then one day, my phone started blowing up with these alerts because I scheduled it. I said between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. And if anyone walks near this area, I want to know about it because no one should really be there. And the first day I look at it, it looked like it was raining. The second day, the same thing. And then there's a pattern. And it turns out that a whole bunch of flying ants decided to swarm right around the camera. The camera picked it up. We called the pest guy. They came and sprayed. 5 days later, no more alerts.
Wow, that's interesting. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, the advancements in technology, and I think that's a kind of a side story, but that brings us back to why we're here, which is education. So many times myself and you and your team get brought into projects with clients and they're not quite sure what they want. There's such a need for education because you could do everything from a basic camera to something advanced, like you just said, that I would think a lot of clients of the folks that are on this call would be looking for, but it goes back to education. So that's a really great story. Phone systems are another one, which I think people probably thought, phone technology went away. I mean, I haven't had a landline phone in I don't know how long. However, we had to put a VoIP phone at our house last year to work from home. And that's obviously I hate the term new normal, but it is the new normal, right? The mix of go to work and work from home. So phone system technology is actually coming back. Gaming is another one. If you have teenagers in the house, being able to use the different gaming systems, connecting, playing games with people across the world is another big area. And then going back to outdoors, which we've seen a big resurgence in, especially with the pandemic, and I don't think it's going to go away. But being able to control the pool and spa, controlling things on the landscape like landscape lighting or irrigation, and then in general, just other home automation systems. Everything's connected to the internet these days, and a lot of that stuff we can integrate into these projects. So speaking of which, what is systems integration? So, years ago, our industry got started. Integration was, well, my client has a DVD player, a CD player, a TV remote, a VCR remote, right? They had all these remotes sitting on their coffee table. So the only way to just basically take all those remotes and reduce them into one would be to put in an integration system. And nowadays, all these devices have their own apps. And so your CD player has an app, your Blu-ray player has an app. Most of your source content is now inside the TV in a smart app. So you don't necessarily have all these multiple handheld remotes, but you do have multiple apps. And so I've met with clients who have a folder on their phone that says smart home, and inside there's multiple apps. That's not really systems integration. So the ability to consolidate control into one centralized area is what systems integration is. So we still have all these different things that we can use to control our technology. We have smartphones, we have computers, tablets, remote controls, but all these things have different apps. And so that systems integration, or one type of control system, allows you to control all the different subsystems in the house. So if we go back to the previous slides and you look at all the different technology from cameras to audio to video, there's an app for each one of those. So why not take all those apps and put them into one to be able to control your home? Furthermore, aside from the convenience factor of having everything in one app, you have the ability to do something called scenes. So at the push of a button that says good morning, or maybe you don't even push the button, it's just on a timed schedule, Monday through Friday, shades start to go up, lights start to turn on, HVAC goes to a set climate, set point, music turns on in different areas. There's the same thing that happens for good night. There's the same thing that happens for entertain. I have a button at my house on my control system that says entertain. So friends are coming over and I'm still cooking and getting prepared. I hit entertain. Music goes on in the right zones to the right playlist at the right volume. Lights go to the right setting. All the things that I want set in place for my friends happens at the push of a button. And that's really where systems integration comes in to key there. So when the client's looking for technology, it's great to be able to control things and make them turn on and off and control them from your smart app. But having that integration tied together is really the key. So let's dive into some of those technologies we talked about. When we look at distributed audio, basically at its core, distributed audio is being able to have music play throughout the house. And so you can do that numerous ways. We prefer to do something that's a wired system. Wired is always better. There's less failure points, less chance of any problems. You're going to get the best quality when you go that route. Looking at a wireless solution is really something we only try to do if there's no other option. If the house is already built, we can't pull cabling. But when you look at any type of distributed audio solution, these are some of the main factors you have to look at. How does the client want to control it? Do they want to control it from their phone? Do they want to control it from something that's on the wall? Back in the day, we used to have volume controls that we would turn up and down on the wall. We still have that done today, although it can be done digitally through the apps and through the network. So when we're going to do that, there's a pre-wire that has to happen. So pre-wire has to happen before drywall goes up. That's something that should always be done, and that's a whole nother presentation we do on pre-wire and infrastructure. But if you're doing a project, even if the client's not sure what they want for technology, a pre-wire should always happen. It's so much cheaper to get the wire in place before all those walls are pulled up, and then in the event the client wants to do something, all that infrastructure is built into place. The other thing to consider about distributed music is it's easy to use. So depending on the control system or the app you're using, it needs to be easy to use. And audio source is another one. So years ago, we used to have 300 disc CD changers that we would load up our collection into. Now we just use an app. But maybe your client does still have a CD collection that needs to be ripped onto a hard drive and easily accessible. So understanding what their source of music is extremely important. You also have the preamp or the amplifier, which is going to power the speakers. You have the network to contend with, and then ultimately the speakers are the endpoints. In each one of these, areas we're talking about, we could dive deeper on, right? And again, that's why it's important to engage with a systems integration professional. Speakers, do they want high quality? Do they want just background music? Do they want invisible? There's so many choices and selections that we need to review to meet and exceed those client systems. But there are a lot of solutions for distributed audio systems today. So video distribution, again, in the past, somebody would have, say, 10 or 12 TVs, which means for them to watch content, they would need 10 or 12 cable boxes, 10 or 12 Apple TVs, 10 or 12 DVD players. So one of our solutions that came about in our industry was video distribution. So we could take maybe 4 or 5 of those devices and distribute them throughout all the different televisions. And all the televisions could share these sources. So that required less sources, less rental fees. It was just a lot easier to use, less equipment. The other benefit too is you don't see the boxes. So in this example, you have these 3 zones of TVs. There's no equipment. It's located somewhere else in the property. That's now changed today because a lot of those sources are built into those TV displays. But it is still something to contend with when you have a large property, when you have a lot of displays. Maybe you want to have the basketball game on outside in your media room, in your kitchen, and in another area. It's better to do that over one shared source than to have different sources at each location where audio and video is out of sync. So there's a lot of reasons why someone would still want video distribution today. Ultimately, it comes down to what type of content they're using and what the goals of the client are. And also too, even though some of the products or some of the TVs have sources built into them, clients are wanting to hide TVs in these environments. So as you see in this example, these TVs are flushed into the wall. And so when we do that, they still want some type of box or source to provide that content. We have to remote locate those things. And so again, video distribution is the technology we can use so we can put that stuff in an AV closet, minimize the installation of the TV so it sits flush in the environment while the client is still able to enjoy the content. Jeff, question for you on video distribution, because again, it has changed over the years. When you're talking to a client about this, what are some of the things or benefits that you highlight, reasons why they might want video distribution?
Well, there's a few obvious ones and a few not so obvious ones. For example, an outside TV or a mirror TV in a bathroom and so forth, it's really not appropriate to put any equipment in those environments. There's no place to put them or they wouldn't withstand the elements anyway. Even control wouldn't work because outside infrared line of sight controls don't work because it's so bright. Those are the obvious classic things. But in the realm of streaming, and what we've found is that there's a different experience on every single TV. Sony has the Android, Samsung's got their solution, LG's got theirs, and so on. And every single TV needs a login, a username, and password. Now we've got 10 apps to log into, anything from Netflix, Amazon Prime, CBS Now, HBO Plus, Disney Plus, all these different things. You have to go around and log into all these platforms, and got to help you if you have to change your password because somebody hacked you. Now you've got that problem. With centralized video distribution, you could use a player like a Roku or an Apple TV or a Modulus or what have you, even a Xfinity with a Netflix, and then that same exact box is distributed to all the TV. You don't have to maintain all these different user experiences, all these different ways of logging in and maintaining the password. I think that's a key thing that's often lost until you sit down and actually do it.
That's actually a really great point I didn't think about. I look at my own situation. We have one, two, three, four, five, I think six zones of video. We're a small family, so we're not watching all those zones at once. But I have one TiVo box and one Apple TV, and we're able to share those things. But God forbid Apple TV does a software update, and I gotta relog into my DirecTV app and relog into this. If I had to do that across all those zones, so that's that convenience factor. And that always happens right when you're about to have people over too, right? So that's a really good point. So let's move on to theater considerations. Again, what I like about this presentation is we talk about something we've probably all experienced, but we don't realize the work that goes in behind this. And as I mentioned before, as systems integrators, we're brought in so late onto the projects, it can be frustrating. So we'll get plans and it'll say, "Here's your room to build a theater." Awesome, you thought of our room, but there's other things that weren't thought about. So things like sound isolation. So sound isolation is um, often misunderstood, but sound isolation means we're going to isolate the sound in this space and isolate the rooms outside the space from that sound. There's nothing more disturbing than somebody who's watching a awesome movie like Mission Impossible, and there's all these explosions happening, and the people in the kitchen can hear it, right? So sound isolation allows us to keep the sound in the theater. So aside from keeping the sound in the theater, actually gives you a more impressive experience because that's not escaping out into the environment. And then you have acoustical treatments, which is, you see some of the decorative finishes in this picture here, but aside from the beauty and the aesthetics, it's actually improving the sound of the room because all these spaces are not ideal. And then you have sight lines in terms of, being all the people being able to see the movie in this space. So you see the second set of seats are on risers, which allows them to see over the heads of the people in front. So everybody's got the same viewing experience. You have seating considerations. Sometimes clients don't want theater seats. They just want one big couch and some bean bags, and that's okay. If we know that's what they want, we can design the theater around that so that they don't sacrifice on the experience. Screen placement and size. So this is another big one. Oftentimes we're told, here's this room, and oh, the room's 15 feet wide, and they want a 15-foot screen. Well, that's not always ideal, right? There's limitations. So if we know what they want and we know what those limitations are, or we can be brought in to help make decisions on the room based on that, we can help meet that client's expectations. There's other things too, like doors and other areas in the space. So I can't quite tell from this picture, but it looks like in the front right area is a door. And that's not ideal for a theater because if you're watching a movie and someone needs to use the bathroom, they're going to get up, open the door, which is very distracting. They're going to let light into the room. So ideally, when we do theaters, we want that door in the back of the space, just like at the movie theater you go to. So again, if we're brought in early before these designs are set in stone, moving that door is pretty simple, but it's not simple once the project's underway. So again, and there's a lot more on this list. I'm sure Jeff is, aware of. Maybe we talk about it later that have to go into this, but these are some of the main things that you want to consider. Media servers is another area. So Jeff had mentioned, logging into all these different apps for streaming services. But what a lot of the clients that we work with that are on these projects are looking to have a dedicated list or a dedicated collection of movies that are there and available at their fingertips, not relying on streaming stuff over the internet, but literally having a media server locally that has all the different movies that they want. with this really easy to use interface and this integration directly into their system. And a lot of these media servers these days aren't all about managing their existing collection, because we still have clients that do have hundreds of DVDs and Blu-rays, but also, just like I mentioned earlier, studios are doing direct release to HBO Max and Disney Plus. Some of these media server companies have digital platforms where they have access to movies that have been released recently. And a lot of the media servers, this stuff's released in the purest of form of content. So it's true 4K with all the different types of audio processing. Whereas with streaming, sometimes you're sacrificing some of that quality. So you imagine someone has a theater like we showed on the previous slide, having the best quality of playback of content is something that they're going to be interested in, and they can do that with a media server. We touched on automated window treatments earlier. So, we pretty much have a wide range of products that can automate any type of window treatment out there, from draperies, blinds, shades, outdoor shutters, and also outdoor screens. Particularly down here, there's a few products out there that allow you to have automated screens on your patio that are actually hurricane proof. So imagine having to prepare for a hurricane and you just put all your patio and outdoor items under your patio, hit a button, boom, you're protected and ready for that next hurricane. Knock on wood, we don't have any this year, but there's a lot of other benefits to just having, shades open at the push of a button. These can put on timers so that they open at different times of the day. There's also the benefit of energy savings. You can open up all the windows in your space, let in the natural light so you don't have to use the lights in your house. So there's a variety of benefits when it comes to automated window treatments, and we have a lot of different solutions out there. But again, being involved early allows us to use some of the different solutions. We have wired, we have wireless, we have shades that can go up inside of pockets. There's a lot of things that have to be engineered and designed into the project. We touched a little bit on security systems earlier. Again, lots of big advancements there. Aside from just a camera that's, watching our outdoor space, we can create some of those zones and create alerts based on motion, or as Jeff said, on temperature. So again, depending on how security conscious client is and what they're looking to do, there's a variety of things that we can do with the security systems. And lighting control. So lighting control comes down to a number of things. As I mentioned earlier, it started really early on with the really large home that was 30,000 square feet, and we had to control 200 to 300 loads, and the client just doesn't want to walk around turning on and off all these different lights. But it moved on to aesthetics. That 30,000 square foot home, you walk into the kitchen and you probably see a bank of about 10 different switches on the wall. That doesn't look too well. So with centralized lighting systems, we can reduce that down to a single keypad, but still have the ability to control every single load in that space. And so that's a specific type of lighting control system that we can put in there. But if that's the goal, we can achieve that. You also have the convenience aspect. As I said, clients don't have to walk around the house. They can hit a good night button that lights up a path to their room, that lights up their bedroom, shuts down everything else. You have the safety and security aspect. If you have elderly people in the house, being able to hit a button or have a motion sensor trigger lights if they get up at night. Or from a security aspect, you have that security alert that triggers something that through systems integration that can turn lights on inside the house. So the entire house lights up at 100% in the event that an intruder has gotten into the space. Or furthermore, your lights outside can start flashing or changing colors if you have that technology, all based on a security event. All of this leads to energy savings. So again, if you have the ability to control lights and turn them on and off at certain times, over time, you are going to save energy. And then ultimately the flexibility, being able to turn on any light, any load at any level at any point in time is extremely flexible for your property. Gaming is another area. As I mentioned earlier, it's become a family activity. It's interactive. Nowadays, kids can, play games all over the world. If you've ever seen the movie Ready Player One, we are ever increasingly close to that type of environment, believe it or not. It's actually a really good movie. But gaming is another thing to think about. We've been involved in projects where the clients wanted 4 screens all next to each other on a wall in one space with 4 different gaming systems so the kids could all play together, kids and adults, and then they want to connect and play with different people all over the world, which then ties into networking. So there's a lot of things to consider. Is it a group activity? Are we connecting over the internet? Do we have the space required? My daughter likes to play a game that requires us to move our living room furniture because she dances with her friends. There's a lot of really cool things that are happening with gaming. I've joined in on that occasion. So also outdoors. So we talked earlier about pool, spa, and outdoor spaces. The picture on the left is a beautiful project that's part of another presentation we do on outdoor technology. But if you just look at that space, aside from the beautiful design, you see a water feature, you see a hot tub, you see a fire feature, you see WRGB lighting, all those different things that we can do from a single button of a control system. Those are all standalone technologies, not to mention the jets, the spa jets, the temperature of the pool, all those things we can change. And I'm sure that there's some audio integrated in that landscape. And then on the picture on the right, you have this outdoor TV. It's a little hard to see, but that wood panel above the TV actually folds over to hide that TV when it's not in use. So we have some automation going on outside. We have speakers in the ceiling. So many different things that we can do outdoors. And again, we've seen a really big resurgence in clients investing in their outdoor spaces. We have a lot of technology that we can supply there. But as Jeff pointed out, talking about the TVs, we have the elements to deal with. So again, allowing us to engage with you and your clients to talk about what we can do, what we can't do, what specific products we need to decide on because of the elements, especially down here in Florida with the salt in the air. It's really important that we discuss these things early on. And we can't stop talking about technology without talking about, network. And so, we talked about this a little bit earlier. I asked the question to Jeff, but technology infrastructure, better Wi-Fi, higher bandwidth, it all comes down to wiring. What most people don't know is that even if you have a gig of service, as soon as you go wireless, your speed cuts in half. That's just limitations of devices. A lot of our wireless devices can't even do half of a gig. They just don't have the chipsets, right? So wiring is so important. It's so inexpensive to do, assuming our walls are opened up. And we should always have these wired connections. I'm sure over the last year, with all of us working from home and doing school from home, we've experienced those, slow speeds. And it's not just download, it's upload too. We have a VoIP phone and our downloads could be cranking, but if our upload speed isn't good, then people can't hear us talking. So this is uber important. And I think it's going to be a trend going forward because this, working and schooling from home is not going to go away. And I think people are going to want to invest in networking. And you always have new technologies coming along too. Like now the latest in wireless is Wi-Fi 6. And so having infrastructure in place allows you to adapt to that new technology. Jeff, do you have anything you want to add here? I mean, this could be a whole nother presentation, I know, but anything you want to add here on networking?
Yeah, you mentioned Wi-Fi 6, and that really came into vogue in September 2020, replacing Wi-Fi 5 that was a 2013 launch. The big deal is not only just performance, but also how it deals with legacy devices, because all these AV things, they're not putting state-of-the-art chipsets in, as you mentioned, for Wi-Fi. They're using the least expensive, which is typically the legacy band, the what they call the 2.4 gig, but it has to intermix with the high speed stuff. And Wi-Fi 6 allows more clients to be connected with varying technologies and yet allow the handoffs and the performance to work. One other thing I'd point out is one wireless access point. You think, oh, we don't have a big family, but when you start adding in all those devices like TVs and mobile devices and so forth, it's not unusual to see 20 or 30 clients on one wireless access point. And so that network backbone on the Wi-Fi side is where your throttle point is.
Yeah, and my suggestion to clients when I talk to them is like, listen, you're gonna have, as you point out, 20 some Wi-Fi devices as is. Let's not just add more because we think it's easier. If we can connect these things to the network hardwired, we should do that. And then that way the wireless devices can perform as good as they need to. They're not fighting with these other devices that could have been connected and could have been wired directly. But Yeah, it's a super important
Yeah.
area. I mean, I've been to
There is
projects.
one,
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say there is one more thing there to point out is a wireless access point is a single point of failure. If you have 20 clients connected and that one wireless access point goes offline for whatever reason, nothing works. If you had it hardwired, everything around you would work and you'd notice, hey, I don't have Wi-Fi in my iPad, but my TV's still working, my control system's still working, my laptop, or desktop that's hardwired. Just think about that in terms of reliability, because that is a single point of failure that most people don't think about.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I was going to tell a story, and this was 2 years ago actually, but I went to a project and it was in framing, so we plenty of time to pull wire, and the client was insisting on putting no wiring in. Everything's wireless. It's a probably 8,000 square foot house, and I'm like, listen, it's going to cost you maybe a couple $1,000 just to pull wire here. Like, future proof it. Like you need to have wiring. It's like the plumbing for your home for water. So can't stress enough importance over that. On that note, to your point, we are in a wireless world. So again, if you are not putting the wired infrastructure in place, there are devices that will only work on wireless. So to Jeff's point, you're going to have 20 or 30 wireless devices competing. So pool systems, pool and spa controls, those controllers get installed outside. Some of them do have network connection, some of them don't. So they have no option but to communicate wirelessly. Garage doors and gate openers, various home automation devices. Heck, a lot of the toys that kids have these days that have an app that's wireless, right? They don't work with a connected wired system. So you're going to have wireless systems in the space that you can't control over it. So that's why you want to control what you can control. So when it comes to the main technology, you want to have a wired infrastructure connection there. So what's the action plan? So proper planning, as the name and title implies, and I joked earlier, but we can never get involved early enough on a project, even if it's, from the architectural stage, you may be designing a project that might not happen for 2, 3 years, and we know technology changes super fast. We can still add value and give suggestions on things to think about, even in those stages. Build relationships with technology partners, especially down here in Florida. You may have clients that are coming from out of state. They may have their own technology professional, coming from that state. But why not partner with someone local that can just answer questions and help be that hero, right? Help you avoid pitfalls. If the client wants, we get brought into projects all the time, and the client's like, oh, I have this condo with floor to ceiling windows and a view of the ocean, but I have to watch TV at night. I don't want a TV sitting in front of my bed. Okay, we can, bring it out of the ceiling. We can bring it out from under the bed. But the only way we can do that and still, follow the design plan from the interior designer is if we're brought in early and put in the right framing, the right electrical, and specify the right product. If framing's up and drywall's up, you're going to have something mounted on the ceiling that looks atrocious. So build those relationships so we can help answer those questions. If you know the client wants to hang a TV from the ceiling and the integrator they've hired is not helping you because they're from out of state, let us be that hero. We hate to see technology done, installed improperly. So bring us in as early as possible. Can't say that enough. So today we talked about all the different types of residential systems, some of their unique attributes. We talked about things related to energy efficiency, comfort, convenience, and safety, because that's what a lot of this technology does for us. We talked about wired versus wireless, and we talked about kind of timelining for engaging in electronics system professionals specific to the design build process. And that is going to bring it to Q&A. I don't know if there was any questions in the chat while we were talking, or Jeff, was there any things that I brought up while we were talking that we want to continue discussing?
Yeah, so I've made some notes here, and please, anybody that wants to chat or jump in, feel free. This is the free for all portion of this. One thing you didn't mention is IoT, the Internet of Things sensors. It's a buzzword that has been out there for a year or two now. It's coming more into vogue, but what we're finding is IoT sensors, practical IoT sensors, would be like leak detectors or humidity sensors, something that could alert you when there's, say, an air conditioning condensate line leak in your pan, something that happens to all of us Floridians. Um, what we found with the latest technologies is that the Wi-Fi infrastructure, and I'm talking about the wireless access points that you plot around your house, um, actually create a mesh network, a Bluetooth low energy mesh network that you can then attach IoT sensors to. So if you plan this out right, you can actually use wireless distribution that you put in for something other than just Wi-Fi. So I think that's an important thing because it's usually trying to hardwire those are very, very difficult. Trying, where all do you want them, and then try and get a wire to that spot and then hide a sensor is difficult. That is a really good use for wireless low energy stuff. They got batteries that last 5, 10 years on them. So that's one thing. Another thing that nobody really thinks about, especially in larger homes, is doorbell. I always say when people move in, the most important thing is obviously they want their network up day one, but the doorbell. Then everybody's coming and going. They're ringing the doorbell. Nobody can hear the doorbell anywhere around the house, inside, outside, and whatnot. Something like a Sonos is great for music distribution. It does not support doorbell interrupts, which is a common thing that's been around for since the dawn of whole house audio in the professional world. A doorbell interface that would do the ding dong through the ceiling speakers, something that would pause your music, play the doorbell in the zones that you wanted at the volume that you pre-programmed, and then resume to whatever was there before. If it was silence or it was playing the music, it'd go back to it at that volume. Sounds like a very simple thing, but if you don't plan that out, you're not going to hear your doorbell when you're in the backyard, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I
You put
think
a
people
sign on. Yeah,
and I think
go
people
ahead.
think like, oh, well, these devices, these big companies, like that's just a software update. Like that's just going to happen. And to your point, it's not. It's something that's super simple that these devices don't have.
Right. And it's so complex to do, but easy to say. It's just do that, right? Well, hang on now. You got to store 16 zones of audio, their current volume level, push that into a save area, do the ding dong, come back, and it's all supposed to do that without making a pop or waking the baby up. So that's something that I would say can be planned in. The other thing that goes along with whole house audio is control point. Do you really want to have to bust out your phone, launch an app, wait for it to initialize, select your zone, then hit mute when, the doorbell rings or the phone rings, right? Or when you walk into your closet, if you happen to have music in your closets and this and that, it's a pain to just rely on, say, a mobile device for that stuff. You want the mobile device to also work, but a keypad on the wall is so much simpler to have available just to hit the off button on your way out without, hey, hang on, let me get my phone and go through all that rigmarole. So if you think about the ease of use and convenience, that is what makes something truly user friendly is if you've got multiple ways to interact with it. A simple on off or a simple volume can mean whether you're going to use the thing or not. So that's another thing I wanted to bring up. Um, Circling around to your theater thing, one area that I did not see on there was the electrical planning and lighting. So you're going to have motorized chairs, or you might want motorized chairs. You're not going to run all those off of a single outlet. They need to be placed. You don't want extension cords under your chairs. They get tangled up. It's a bad idea. Never ends well when you're rotating that thing up, the footrest up, and tangle up the plug, and things get jammed up underneath there. That's not a good look. So plan for that. Lighting is also extremely important. If there's one area in the house you want to dim down to 0.1% or 1%, it's going to be the theater. 1% seems like, oh, well, that's nothing. Well, try that with an LED light. 1% is bright in a dark, dark, dark room. So I'm talking dedicated theater here. So you want that very low ambient lighting that you can have on the step lights and this and that doesn't cast a shadow onto the screen, you know? So you want to zone it properly. The sconces, the ceiling lights, the task lighting, the bar light, the step light, they should all be zoned so you can create a scene that works for gaming, works for theater mode, works for vacuuming, right? They're all different light levels, all different purposes. Let's see, any questions though? Okay, well, I got one more thing I'll throw out in terms of wireless. Um, we've encountered so many cases where the pool guy comes in and wants to connect a Jandy or a Hayward or whatever to the wireless system, but there's no Wi-Fi access point outside. Over on that side where you've hidden all this equipment, if you have it, it's probably under the covered patio where the people are, where the TV is, where the music is, or whatever. But over on the service area where we're hiding air conditioners and pool pumps and noisy things, well, it's wireless and you don't have any coverage over there. So it's great that it's wireless, but there's no wireless access point. Another new thing that is coming way more often now is like a Tesla or other vehicle to have over-the-air updates. My recommendation, pro tip here, put a wireless access point in your garage. Then when they're wiring those antennas for all those outdoor things, like the landscape controller and the pool controller, have them put the antenna in the garage where the wireless access point is. Now you'll never have a problem, right? And you gain a wireless access point in your garage that you can actually use. If you have a workshop out in your garage or just a car out in your garage, it's useful to have strong Wi-Fi in your garage. It's not as useful to have an outdoor weather rated, super expensive WAP over by the pool equipment to avoid from pulling a wire to the pool equipment. I mean, it's kind of like, it's a $1,600 outdoor WAP that has to be IP67 rated. In the garage, it can be an indoor WAP, half the price, third of the price, and it can service all those things that you never think about. So these are the reasons why you want to plan ahead. And when you ask someone, you want a wireless access point in the garage, it's like, no, why would I ever want that? Well, let me tell you why, right? So
That's a
those are
really
a
good
couple of
point.
thoughts. Yeah, yeah. And that wireless access point, you'll see it'll come in handy for things that you won't even imagine down the road, like a wireless sense, that new technology that tells you how much energy you're using, called Sense. Have you seen that?
Yep.
It's really cool when you turn on your air conditioner. It says how much of your energy are you using. Well, guess what? It's wireless because everything wants to be wireless. They just assume everyone's got wireless access points everywhere inside and outside the house. That's really the flaw of like Nest and some of these lower end cameras and doorbell systems. Yeah, it's great if you have Wi-Fi. So
So
any thoughts on that, Jason?
well, so yeah, I was actually going to segue back to, I felt like I may have demonized Wi-Fi in my presentation, but you brought up a lot of really good points. So to circle back on that, wire when you can wire, but because of all these things that can't be wired, that goes to show why you really need a good wireless system, and it needs to be engineered and designed, not just throwing access points throughout the house, because having more than you need can be harmful. So again, involving a systems integrator who can look at the plans, can heat map the property, look at all these different technologies they want to use in all these different areas, and put together the proper wireless system that works with all those devices. And then we have the wired system on the wired system. So a properly designed network can help augment both of those, wired versus wireless.
It's funny. I had a client come in here the other day, who's a judge, and he wanted cameras, and he said, "Oh, ADT has this package, and what did I think about it?" Right? He said they're wireless cameras, and I said, "Well, how are you getting power to them? Because I haven't seen a battery operated. I mean, the little tiny ones, but an actual dome camera that would be good for outside or whatever. How are you going to make that wireless and then power it? Because if you're running a one single cable, it can provide power and network over a single cable, called power over Ethernet.
Right.
But if you're trying to do a wireless camera, then what?" He said, "Yeah, what they do is they drill through, and then they run a wire down the wall on the inside, and then they just plug in the little power supply, into the nearby outlet." I'm like,
Oof.
okay, that sounds like a good idea. I think everybody would love to have that. It's a wireless camera to save from running a wire, but then you have to run a wire to plug it in. It really makes no sense to me. Plus, you got to put your cameras where the outlets are, or you're running wire for an outlet, which is a lot harder than running a category cable.
Yeah.
So we love wireless, but I think it's sort of all the details are glossed over, and it sounds like it's the right way to go. Um, changing topics drastically. You mentioned TVs being the the app center of the world now, right? Um, Assuming that you've got a good TV, say a Sony, Android, LG, Samsung, they've got apps in them. But getting audio out of that TV and then making like a surround sound or making dialogue that you can hear so you're not real, or I just want a sound bar, that's where the challenge is, because the control of the volume you're now relying on what that TV can do. And I think that's lost on everyone. They just think you attach a sound bar or whatever. And there's so many ways where that does not work because the TVs are not made by the same manufacturers as the sound bars, and things don't handshake properly. And they're trying to be everything to everyone, but yet it doesn't know how to deal with these foreign sources. So that's one of the biggest problems that we have is the simplicity to say add a sound bar and the complexity of actually doing it and having it work right, control volume with little feedback so you know if it's on 20% or muted or whatever. All of those things that we take for granted, it's complex because everybody's trying to do the same thing and it's overlapping.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think the IoT stuff of the world has done great to expose all the cool technology that's out there, but they do gloss over a lot of those details, um, and they make it seem simpler. And there's so much more behind the scenes. You know, when people talk about and I won't say the names because they're in my office, they're going to start talking about these voice assistants, right? That can do all this great stuff, which is true, and they can. But the second you have no internet, those things can't do anything, right? Whereas at least with our
Right.
control systems, even if we lose internet, we have a network that allows us to still do things other than what we're relying on the internet for. And that's a very common misnomer that people don't quite understand. Um,
Yeah.
so again, it all circles back to education, right? And being able to see
Right.
these things. I mean, you guys have an amazing showroom, and pretty much every technology we talked about, you can show and demonstrate right there at your space, which is what people should be doing.
Well, and that's the key is that no manufacturer is buying everyone else's products and putting together a test bed. I can't tell you how many people, and I'm talking about vendors and manufacturers that I've talked to, and I said, well, have you ever tried it with an Xfinity box? I mean, that's what we use in South Florida. Everybody's got one. Oh, no, we don't have access to it. Well, then all these problems that we have that are unique to this one box, no one can even fix. So they rely on somebody else to report a problem and they get frustrated with it. So we've taken it on ourselves that we've built out and keep rebuilding. We're actually going through a renovation now to bring all of the technology in house that we're using so that we can live and use it on a daily basis and see how it operates over a period of time, because it's not just about I plug it in, I hear video or I see video and hear sound and then walk away, it's all good. It's over a period of time where you start seeing the problems. So we have like Hotwire here, which is a new fishing TV in some of the country clubs. We have a Direct TV box. We're going through the motions to get Xfinity installed. Obviously, we have Apple TV, TiVo, Roku, all of those things. We've got. You have to have this little bed because the manufacturers aren't doing it. They're building their stuff in a vacuum and expecting the integrator is going to solve problems that they're unaware of. And I just don't want to be doing that while I'm in a client's home. I just soon do it in our lab and then come in and be once and done. Because, Jeff's rule of AV2, no one can do what we do, but they all know how long it should take us to do it. Right. Well, the only way you do
Right.
that is if you've done it once before.
Good point.
So I'll leave you with that. We're about noon here, which is the end of our program. Is there any other questions from anyone out in the field? Been pretty quiet. We still have 15 people logged in. No, I guess not. I thank everybody for joining us and for sticking it out for the entire hour. And I thank you, Jason, once again, a wealth of knowledge. And I really appreciate working with LK and everybody on the team over there. We rely on you guys and for a lot more than just these seminars. So I appreciate it when you're there for us when we need you.
No, no problem. It's our pleasure. We like working on the projects that we work on together, and we appreciate you involving us in these opportunities so we can help educate the design build community. So I'll remind everyone that Marcio will be sending me over a list of attendees. I'll get the links out, and we'll follow up before the end of the week with the certificates. And of course, any other questions, follow up with the team at Boca Tech.
All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. We're signing off and we'll see you on the next Wednesday.
All
Take
right,
care,
take care.
everybody.